I make three piles of books. One pile is completely nonsense. One pile here I find very important and very good. And one pile is very usable. Let's start with this pile. They have nice pictures. They have nice photos in there. And then they have a sheet who goes up. But the sheet anyway moves. So that is not a handy thing. And then it's all drawn by someone, but it is so not exact. Here, you know, when you have the sheet a little bit different, you don't know where is the bone from the back, and there is no life in there, so it's quite dead. It's not for anatomy. I go a little bit quicker. This is a book who mentioned everything. If you see a leg like this, I never see this in reality. It is so dead. I think it's done from pictures, photos. The things are mentioned, and what is mentioned is not wrong, but it is just not exciting to learn it on this way because it stays so flat and not alive. Then here is another one. If we look, we never see a man like this. It's perfect. It's 1 to 7.5. That's true. Where Michelangelo used 1 to 8. What is more interesting, but anyway, see that things are mentioned, like you say 3 tomatoes, but you don't see the form, what is alive and what is working and what is non-working. It feels very, very weak. So here we see a little bit that it is working because the hat is turned. Then I think the back hat is way too small, but it feels again very soft and not alive. Here we have anatomy makes for physiotherapy. The knowledge is amazing, but you can see there is so much writing. I read it once, but you never read it again. And in the end, we are artists, so we need to make it way more visible. At least here are photos. And when he makes his fist quite strong, then things coming up, and that is mentioned. So at least here we see a little bit muscles in movement, but way too much text. So it's not easy to research again. I went for the name Anatomy and Human Movement. That sounds for me perfect because humans are moving. The book is absolutely undoable. And it's all, it's like making a schema, but not the reality, not having a real bone feeling. And then we have this one I want to show you because this is completely wrong. What they did is making a photo and then they outlined it somehow. You don't have drawings here. This is not drawing. You see how cramped the fingers are. The bones are not in the right place. They need to be round. This you have with foreshortening from a photo camera, but not as a reality. So for this is for us the worst anatomy books you can buy. The lines from both sides are just as strong, so you cannot see. If you draw, it's nice to show when a muscle is working and when a muscle is relaxed. And you can draw that on a different way, harder and softer. Here it's all drawn in the same kind of grayness. And then there is a lot of stuff wrong. You get a lot of mistakes. So don't use this kind of books. The good books. And one is Anatomy from Kunstenaars. It's from the Rijksacademie. You still can buy them very cheap in Holland second-hand. They're quite stunning. There is all the information in there. And there is a photo in there. So you have a photo, you have drawn hips in there. So this is already way better. And if they use bones, it's not drawn bones, but it's a kind of picture from the bones. So it is already way, way better. You see that the bones are turning. It's quite a good book, but it is in the end difficult to find. This is my favorite. Plain simply, I think you have to search for this. What is nice on this book, you have a photo, you have a schema and a system. And then they talk about the small muscle, and here you have where it begins, where it ends, and what's the function. You can really research very easy. You take the back and you have all the backs in a row, and all the time you have pictures. And then they move it so you can see it. The nice thing is most books have only this one, and then you don't know what to do with it because your model is different. And then when you see a photo, it's easier to bring it back to your model. So this is, I think, the book you need to buy. Then I have 2 books from Bammers, and most art school work with Bammers. Bammers is amazing when we have it about systems. Systems is way more how the Russian learn it. System from the rib cage. Here we have a couple rib cages, different directions, because that's quite important when you know it. How the elbows are from different directions. That makes more sense because we never have a straightforward model. Then they have pictures, what is also quite nice in the Bamma's book. And then we have really the bones, how they're working, but all as a system. You learn a system, you learn thinking how things are working, but you don't learn good drawing. And you see it, if you see his own drawings, are systematic, but quite boring. There is a difference with Michelangelo, something happening. He makes first a drawing with the knowledge of his anatomy. He even make nice studies. So you see in the books from Bamma's, the good books from Bamma's, you will see that they explain things, but they also show other drawers, because Bamma's himself is not an artist like Rubens or Michelangelo. There are a couple of Bamma's books. It's never bad to have them. This one is special about movement. But you see, even in his drawings, it's all standing still. It's a little fluffy. If we compare this to a nice drawing from Michelangelo, you have no leftover here. I quite like these two books. I think it's from an art school, Anatomy for Sculptures. There are a lot of photos in there again. Because we need the photos, because the photo is more looking like my model, more than a drawing systematic thing. So they do even the systematic on the pictures itself. So I quite like it. If you can find it, they're not expensive. Buy them, both of them. Also the hat and the neck, they are good. Drawing lessons from the great masters from Beverly Hale. If you see this, and you see a drawing from Michelangelo, he directly explained the muscles on the side. It's way more interesting to see how they use the anatomy, or under the Sartre, how they use the light and where it's hard by the bone and how they make the bones darker. It's a very nice way by Raphael. It's a very nice way to learn your anatomy. So books you can find, and this is all similar. This is, I bought them in Vietnam, so in Vietnamese. It's books from famous pictures, famous drawings by other artists, and then you get the anatomy from it. This kind of books, if you see them, buy them. I'm sure if you talk about anatomy, you will talk about Da Vinci, and he did make beautiful anatomy books. But the trouble is, if you see his anatomy, it's not so alive. What he did was making anatomy from dead people. He took the skin off and then he drew it. In that way, it's more a doctor, but you cannot see if he moves how the muscle is changing. So it is absolutely beautiful drawer, but not as interesting as a Michelangelo, where it's directly alive. When I was a student, I was searching for where to get anatomy on Minerva. There was no anatomy, and I end up in Belgium. They had anatomy, but they give you the bone. You need to learn to draw the bone. What is nice, because you see that it's not a stick and it's turned and it has power. But we never make it to the model, and I think that's the nicest from the class we're going to do. We learn in the morning from where it begins, where it ends, what's the function. We do that on the model, so you have an idea of the size, and you get a more three-dimensional idea, because we're working with a live model, so you really can touch anatomy and you can feel how big it is. Then in the afternoon we draw it, and when he leans on something, you can see that some become stronger and some become softer. So later, when I was 40, I went to a Canadian guy for 6 weeks. We did via internet, and I learned a lot of the anatomy of the names and what's the function. But I had to go back to the studio, work with a live model, and repeat it all, because we don't need to have this whole knowledge in our head, because that's the most important. How we recognize it in a leg. And I think there is anatomy by most people going wrong. Or you have a doctor who knows what is the anatomy, but doesn't see it directly from outside on the skin, and he knows too much, where we only need the outer muscles and the landmarks of the bones. Or you have an artist who knows too less from the anatomy, and we can only correct that with seeing it on a dancer. 26 to the 30 we do anatomy less, and what makes it nice is that I do in the morning more what's in the books, What's the name? Where does it start? Where does it go to? What's the function? How does it move? How we can make it three-dimensional. And then in the afternoon, my father will work more with how it works when the live model is dancing. Then is the moment that things what you learned in the morning, you can see it live and hopefully bring it in your drawing.